part two of covering. So I was like, why does God want me to do these things? I mean, why can't I just, be normal and, go about life with my hair and not covering and not doing this thing and not doing that thing? I don't know. I mean, I guess God just chooses different people to call to different things. Like, are some people called to the priesthood where they can't marry, where, essentially they're serving everyone in the parish, whether they have 3 people or 3,000 people in the parish, for their entire lives, and they like to do that. That's why they become priests. Nobody forced them to become priests. And why are some people drawn to different things, different devotions? I mean, that's just how it is. We're drawn, and and God is drawing you. He's gonna make a way for you to do it, and that's kind of what happened. I mean, by shaving my head with no hair and a large forehead, I then had an excuse to tell people, like, oh, I cover my hair, I cut it, and I'm kind of comfortable with it. And I really was. I'm like, my forehead is so big. Like, once my hair started growing in, it was easier to, like, oh, well, I can deal with this. But before that, I'm like, this is too much forehead. It's a sea of forehead. So, I covered my hair, and by the time I got to school, because, I'd still go without, just to, appease my mom, so it didn't look like I was covering all the time. But once I got to school, that is when I started covering all the time. I never left my room without covering my hair. There was one time for a week I didn't cover my hair, and that was because my hair was sort of in the short, spiky stage, and it would grow in. It would be caught in the fabric of my scarf. It would break off. So I gave it a week, and it grew, and now it just presses down. It lays down, and it's not breaking off anymore. It's actually getting very long and things like that, and I like my hair, and I cover it whenever I leave my room. But when I'm in my room, I don't cover it. Just give my hair a break and some air. But I do cover it when I'm praying or researching religious things. I research Catholicism like there's no tomorrow, and and I also cover it when I'm reading the Bible and things like that. But I'm always, praying and things like that when I'm walking around school, and it just doesn't work for me to, cover my head and then take it off or things like that. And nobody said anything, and one person asked me if I was Muslim. I show a lot of neck for a Muslim. I just want to say that, but but hey, I mean, I can understand why you think I'm Muslim. It, despite the crucifix and the Virgin Mary and the 1,000 saint bracelet I made on my own. I love saint medals. I collect them. I don't collect them all, just the ones that I have devotions to. Apparently, I have a lot of devotions. But but yeah. So that's my story of covering. I cover because of what the Bible says. I mean, the Bible says some clear stuff about covering. Depends on how you interpret it. The Catholic Church doesn't have much of a stand from what I've researched. They don't really mandate it anymore, but they don't say don't do it. And if they did say don't do it, then I wouldn't do it because it's a Catholic church, and whether anyone likes it or not, that is my authority, and that's just who I am. Remember, I converted. I spent 9 months studying Catholicism. RCIA. It was an intellectual decision. I researched it like crazy. This is not just some like blindly following. Just like everything they do makes sense to me. Um, so that's my authority. But that's kind of a good thing because like in the Amish culture and the Muslim or the Amish religion, the Muslim religion, they have mandated set rules for covering. You have to cover like this, you cannot cover like that. So with the Catholic Church not really saying anything about it, I can essentially cover any way I want. So if I want to wear, and I don't just wear, the peasant ones. I do the tickles, I think that's how you say it, the tickles. I don't know. But, the scarf with the bun in the back. And snoods are great. I do those all the time. I have, I can tie them in the back like a braid, and I have all different styles, and sometimes I'll cover, more or less and things like that. But which is great because the Catholic Church hasn't given a stance on it, so essentially I'm free to do whatever I want. Um, And I really like that because, I like colors. I love colors and I love different styles and things like that. And so, it works out pretty well for me. But essentially, the reason I cover is the Bible. I have not read the Bible in full. I'm trying to get through it. But you go to mass every Sunday for 3 years, you'll get through the Bible. They read it every day. But if you go to everyday mass, I think you get through it 2 years. I'm not sure, but still, there's a lot of Bible reading. You'll pick up some Bible reading through your years as a Catholic. But just the first verse, or the second verse, is, I praise you because you remember me in everything and hold fast to the traditions just as I handed them on to you. Traditions. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of women covering their hair. That's a long time for, just some, cultural thing like, oh, well, it's religious, but, I don't really like to do it. But that's a lot of, people covering their hair. And it only stopped recently when, women's lib popped up and, the pants and, I'm woman, hear me roar. I'm as good as any man. I can do anything a man can except professional football and infantry. Women cannot join the infantry. I know that for a fact because my father was infantry. There were no women in there. No. Even if you were, you wouldn't have liked it because they were men in there. I mean, they were boys in there. Ugh. But second part, and I'm reading from NAB, New American Bible, Catholic Bible. It's got the books, or the extra books, or Deuterocanon and things like that. But it says, verse 3, but I want you to know that Christ is the head of every man, and a husband the head of his wife, and God the head of Christ. Now, my dad, he's been to war 7, 8 times. He's been recycled. Essentially, that's messed with him mentally. He walked out. He's not a very nice person. He's abusive, and he used to be a really nice guy, but that's the war for you. But my dad is not here. I don't have a husband. I couldn't get a boyfriend to save my life. I can't even get a guy to take me to the movies. I am like high and dry in the singles department. So that means, the way I feel, I'm closer to God and Jesus. Not like, like better than somebody who is married, but it's kind of like I'm a private in a room full of generals versus, you have, the private, and you have the gunnery sergeant who would be your husband or your father, and then you have, Jesus and God. And you have, there's this little space between there. It's sort of like I'm a private in the field of generals, and I'm kind of like, hi everyone. So because I don't have a dad and I don't have, a husband or a brother who's in charge of things, I'm kind of, the space in the hierarchy is kind of shortened for me. So and that's the thing. This hierarchy that's mentioned, man before woman. I have no issues with that. If I get married, I don't know at this point. I mean, I hope so, but it's not looking too good these days. But the hierarchy is that man is above woman. I have no issue with that. And the thing is, a lot of people say that this is just cultural. But for that to be cultural, that would mean that whole holy hierarchy only mattered to the Corinthians. Does that mean, in France, or if Corinthians moved to France, they were no longer in that hierarchy of woman could be above a man, a woman could be above God? I mean, I don't know. That's just a generalization, but the hierarchy, holy things tend to not dissolve over time or due to, border disputes. Um, Corinth is gone, but I don't think that hierarchy has left, and I don't think that the mandates for the hierarchy have left either. That's why I cover. I'm not saying that everybody else should cover. That's just me. Just putting it out there. Moving on. It says, any man who prays or prophesies with his head covered brings shame upon his head. But any woman who prays or prophesies with her head unveiled brings shame upon her head, for it is one and the same as if she had had her head shaved. For if a woman does not have her head veiled, she may as well have her hair cut off, which I did. But I thought that's interesting too, because well, it's something we can do that men can't. And that's just the gist of it. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, that's what God said. and through St. Paul, and I mean everybody's like, oh, I'm a woman, I can do everything a man can't, and well, that's something else that you can do that a man cannot. You can have kids, you can cover your hair as an outward sign of devotion and the acknowledgement to God. Men can't. They can't wear anything on their head, but it's a lot easier to not do anything for devotion than it is to do something for devotion. You can be silent, or let's say, you can talk about God, and that's easy. I mean, for most people, and it's great to talk about God, but to decide to take a vow of silence, that's something kind of big. That's not just, sort of like, talk about God for an hour, and then I'm gonna, eat lunch. Taking a vow of silence is a hard thing, and covering can be a hard thing to show your love and devotion to God. Now, I think that's great because, we as females, hear us roar, we can show our devotion. We can do something difficult as our devotion, something outward for our devotion that men can't do. I mean, there's other ways for them to show their devotion, but for us, there is something specifically listed in the Bible for women, a devotion meant for us. That's great. It's like for girls only, and that's pretty cool. I mean, that's pretty awesome if you ask me. Um, and then, the whole shameful for her head to be shaved and things like that. A lot of people say, like, oh, her natural hair, or her hair is her covering. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, the whole, like, well, if she doesn't have long hair, then she should have her head shaved. Well, isn't that kind of the same thing? But if she doesn't have her head covered, then she should be shaved. That makes more sense to me. It might not make sense to you, but that's fine. That's just me. It's just me. Um... And also, something that really got me that cannot be attributed to culture, I think, is the verse 10. For this reason, a woman should have a sign of authority on her head because of the angels. St. Paul just sort of drops that line and moves on. It's kind of enough said type thing. It's sort of like, there's nothing else to say about that. That should be reason enough. I mean, God telling you to do it is reason enough. But he doesn't explain, like, because the angels like it when women cover their hair, and they like it when they do this, and they don't like it when they do. He just says because of the angels. No reason at all. And last time I checked, angels aren't really all that culture conscious. They're not like, oh, well, these are the Babylonians, so they have to wear, paint their faces yellow. And these are the Chinese, so they have to wear triangles on their heads. It's really not. They aren't looking for, like, oh, well, you're a Corinthian and you only matter to me because you have a head covering. It's kind of a. It just angels, holy things, Jesus, God, hierarchies. They kind of transcend time and time and space. Culture. It just the argument of culture for me when people bring that up, it's really not. It just doesn't seem viable in this situation. Now, if it said circumcision and things like that, which you don't have to do anymore in Catholicism, Christian religions, that, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a religion and cultural thing that you don't have to do anything, or animal sacrifice. But this is just kind of different. This is a reason. Also, it's New Testament. I think all the Bibles should be paid attention to, but it's New Testament, and this is, they are talking to the Christian church, not talking about Judaism anymore in the New Testament. So I think that's an interesting point also to make. But also there's the part that says, judge for yourselves. You decide what's wrong and what's right. Now, there's a right choice and there's a wrong choice. I'm not saying that you're doing it wrong if you're not covering your hair, but the way I read it is, there's a right choice, there's a wrong choice. You choose. I'm not going to make you choose, because that's kind of on you. Just like with every other thing in the Bible. I'm not going to make you choose to do it, but you have the information. There it is, and it's up to you to follow it. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to close here and follow up on the next video. I'm very long-winded, if you can't tell, so this is going to be a long time before I finish. You'll be seeing a lot of my face.